The YA movie craze of the early 2010s was such a weird time in Hollywood. There was a race happening between all the big studios over who could find the next Twilight, Harry Potter, or Hunger Games. But more often than not, these resulted in misses rather than hits. 2013's Beautiful Creatures is a perfect example of one of these failed franchise attempts. For many folks, the movie was forgotten about and tossed aside with the other failed YA franchise starters. But don't you worry, as Isenhart Productions is here to remind you of all the movies that you forgot. So join me today as we examine the history of this film, analyze why it failed, and I'll offer up some of my personal thoughts on the project. 2013's Beautiful Creatures is of course based on the 2009 novel by the same name, written by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. It is the first installment into a series of 4 books known as the Castor Chronicles, which follow a young boy named Ethan Waite, who falls in love with a mysterious new girl in town named Alina, who introduces him to a secret world of magic. As soon as the book hit shelves, there was already plans being made for a feature film adaptation, as in 2009, Alcon Entertainment bought up the film rights, with Richard Regravenes set to write and direct the picture. Casting went underway at the end of 2011. Over the next several months, big names such as Viola Davis, Jeremy Irons, and Emma Thompson signed on. As for the 2 leads, Alice Englert was cast as Lena and Jack O'Connell was cast as Ethan. However, due to a scheduling conflict, O'Connell had to drop out and he was replaced with Alden Ehrenreich. Principal photography kicked off in April of 2012, shooting in Louisiana, and lasted until the end of June. Filming went without any major problems, and by the end of production, the budget was estimated to be around $60 million, not including marketing or distribution. Beautiful Creatures hit theaters on February 14th of 2013 for an opening weekend gross of $7 million. It came in number 6 at the box office behind A Good Day to Die Hard, Identity Thief, Safe Haven, Escape from Planet Earth, and Warm Bodies. In the US, it made $19 million, and overseas it made $40 million, for a total worldwide gross of just $60 million, which made it a financial loss. As for the reviews, the film currently holds a rotten 48% critic and 54% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, in addition to a 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, a 52% score on Metacritic, and a 2.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Due to the poor box office and lackluster reviews, the plans to adapt the next 3 books in the series were abandoned. There were also some criticisms from the fans about changes made from page to screen, which would have had impacts on the other movies down the road. And since 2013, there hasn't been much news on another adaptation or reboot of any kind. A Change.org petition urging Netflix to revive the books as a series did get some traction back in 2018, but other than that, there has been very little news. So now that we know the history behind the film, let's discuss a few reasons why it failed to make a splash at the box office. Beautiful Creatures is a film that failed for a plethora of reasons. As is the case with nearly every YA novel adaptation, there were differences from the book that angered a section of the fanbase which swore off the film. But there are other bigger factors at play which contributed more. This movie was trying too hard to be the next Twilight. At every step in the marketing campaign, it tried to cash in on that franchise's success, which is a tactic that backfired. Here's a quote from box office analyst Jeff Bach. When you're pushing your film as a Twilight knockoff, which WB's press machine so blatantly did over the last couple weeks, it actually enraged the Twihards, who vehemently defend their cherished cinematic turf. I actually think Twihards believe they have the copyright on gothic love stories, and you know what? They just might be right. Truth is, the Twilight demographic didn't turn out, and even though the reviews of Beautiful Creatures are better than the top films at the box office, it was perceived as too different from the norm to make much of an impact. Another big factor was competition at the box office. Beautiful Creatures debuted the same exact day as 3 other movies, those being A Good Day to Die Hard, Safe Haven, and Escape from Planet Earth. Aside from the last one, all these movies went on to have successful theatrical runs. Not only was Beautiful Creatures trying to cash in on the Twilight fad, but it was also heavily marketing towards the romance crowd, trying to become the Valentine's Day movie. But Safe Haven claimed that title, and Beautiful Creatures was left with the scraps. However, the movie that I think had the biggest impact on Beautiful Creatures was Warm Bodies, which was in its second week. Warm Bodies is in the exact same subgenre as Beautiful Creatures. It's a young adult book-turned-movie that was partially inspired by Twilight and blended romance with the supernatural. Not to mention, Warm Bodies was made for just $35 million and had much stronger reviews from both fans and critics. For those YA fans out there that wanted their Twilight fix, Warm Bodies provided it and made more than Beautiful Creatures did in the US alone. And this of course ties into oversaturation in the market, which is something you see pop up time and time again with these quote-unquote Twilight clones. There were too many YA movies hitting theaters in too short of a time, and audiences simply could not support every single one. Lastly, the poor reviews and word of mouth killed any momentum that this movie could have had to perform well. But is it really as bad as the reviews say? Well, I have some thoughts that I would like to share. I would like to preface this section by saying I have not read the Castor Chronicles, so my point of view is just from an average theater goer. Some of my thoughts and critiques will probably be very different from fans of the books. This might be a hot take given the reviews for this film, but I actually enjoyed Beautiful Creatures. I think since I am so used to watching other terrible movies in the YA subgenre, like The Fifth Wave and The Mortal Instruments, I automatically had my expectations very, very low. I thought I was going to hate this movie, but it really surprised me and I found lots to like about it. Let's start off with the cast, since that is by far the best part about this film. I found Alden Ehrenreich to be a really strong protagonist. He is extremely charismatic and is very easy to root for. I appreciated how he wasn't your stereotypical brooding, mysterious male lead that you see in all of these movies. Ehrenreich has gotten a bad rap from Solo. I think he is a far better actor than people give him credit for. I also bought the romance between our two leads. With most of these YA movies, the leads have very little chemistry and you have a hard time rooting for the couples. But for some reason, they just worked for me. I also gotta give this film props for not having an annoying love triangle. I am very grateful for that. What also surprisingly worked for me was the humor. Again, I was expecting the comedy to be cringe and basic, but I found myself cracking a smile and chuckling at many points while watching this. There is a fair amount of charm and wit to be found in this picture. The ensemble cast for this movie is also insane. This Letterboxd review by Ashley pointed out that this cast has won 10 Emmys, 7 Golden Globes, and 4 Oscars between all of them. By far, my favorite scene is the one between Jeremy Irons and Emma Thompson in the church, where they are seeing who can chew the scenery more. They didn't have to go this hard, but I'm glad they did. Beautiful Creatures also does a great job at establishing the setting. Maybe it's because I also grew up in a small town, but in the first 15 minutes, you get a really good idea of the little cliques and drama within the town of Gatlin. I was surprised to learn that this wasn't a real place. It was so fleshed out. This movie started off really strong, but every 30 minutes that passed, it just got worse and worse. The second half of the movie just does not flow well. It feels like a collection of standalone scenes and it has a hard time blending together in a continuous narrative. The plot beats don't naturally lead into each other and it messes up the pacing. There's also a protagonist switch halfway through where the story starts to focus on Lena instead of Ethan, and that's where it started to lose me. No offense to Alice Englert, but her performance wasn't as strong and the script wasn't doing her any favors. Oddly, when the story started to focus on the casters, destiny, curses, and magic, that's when it started to get bad. You would think these would be the most interesting parts of the film, but the fact that they were so cliche and derivative made it a dull watch. The movie excelled when there was very little magic, as there was more intrigue, like the scene where Jeremy Irons' character makes Ethan recite his future, and the scene where Ethan gets stuck in the spell trying to enter the Ravenwood property. I loved these scenes because it makes the magic seem more mysterious. It's like not showing the monster in a horror movie. When we started to get big battles with the casters throwing spells all about, it didn't have the same impact. I just did not care for the climax of the story and I found it to be pretty weak. The visual effects are cheesy, the villain's plan isn't fully explained and is contrived, and the emotional beats it tries to hit are just underwhelming. But most importantly, Ethan doesn't have anything to do. I mean, we followed Ethan for the entire movie, but then he has nothing to do in the climax. I thought Lena wiping Ethan's memory of their time together was a great emotional moment, but it totally took his character off the chessboard for the last 15 minutes of the story. Also, maybe I missed something, but I found it weird that Ethan's dad didn't have an impact on the story or even showed up. In the beginning, they mention how he's been a recluse ever since Ethan's mom died, and I kept waiting for him to make an appearance towards the end of the story, but he never did. I guess they were saving that for the sequel. That never happened. But all in all, out of every failed YA franchise starter and Twilight clone that I've covered on this channel, Beautiful Creatures is by far my favorite one. I didn't hate this movie and for the most part enjoyed it. It's honestly a shame we didn't get another one, but then again, I'm sure book fans might feel differently since many changes were made from the source material. But I think I've said enough. Let's wrap this up. Beautiful Creatures is, in my opinion, one of the better failed YA franchise starters. However, while trying to cash in on the success of the Twilight Saga, it turned potential fans away. Additionally, competition at the theater and poor reviews caused the film to fail at the box office. So that's the story of 2013's Beautiful Creatures, yet another franchise that never was. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? How does it compare to the books? I'd love to know in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. And here's a clue for next week's video.